Overnight, dozens of Israeli Air Force jets and missiles punched through Iranian airspace, striking multiple nuclear-linked facilities and killing the head of the Revolutionary Guard along with dozens of other leaders. Tel Aviv has declared a nationwide state of emergency while Tehran vows swift retaliation. In the midst of all this, oil future prices have spiked, gold popped, and Bitcoin tumbled more than 5%, slipping below $104,000. If you hold crypto, stocks, or even just a 401k, this is not background noise. It is a gut check. Geopolitics at a nuclear level is colliding with a liquidity shock that could ripple through every asset class, and it puts the spotlight on the question we keep asking. Does Bitcoin act like digital gold or just another high beta tech asset when real bombs start falling? In this video, you'll get a rapid timeline on exactly what's happening in the Middle East and who's responding, along with our expert analysis from chartist Paul Sampson, who will give you a clear and decisive breakdown on Bitcoin, futures, and broader markets, along with what this means for us investors. Because ultimately, guys, fear and uncertainty are spiking, but informed traders turn chaos into clarity. Let's jump in. All right, guys. So over the last few hours, Israel has made multiple preemptive strikes on Iran. They are claiming with their official statement that they are targeting Iran at the moment because they believe Iran is roughly 1 to 2 weeks out from having enough enriched uranium to build roughly 15 nuclear warheads. So let's go ahead and listen into their official statement, and then we'll dive into some of the current breaking news.
The Iranian regime has called for the destruction of the State of Israel, planning and advancing concrete military plans to do so. Over the past few months, intelligence has shown that Iran is closer than ever to obtaining a nuclear weapon. This morning, the IDF began preemptive and precise strikes targeting the Iranian nuclear program in order to prevent the Iranian regime's ability to build a nuclear bomb in the immediate time frame. We have no choice. We are operating against an imminent and existential threat. We cannot allow the Iranian regime to obtain a nuclear weapon that would be a danger to Israel and the entire world. This operation is for our right to exist here, for our future, and for our children's future. The State of Israel has the right and the obligation to operate in order to protect its people and will continue to do so.
All right, so there you have it. That's the official statement from the IDF. They're claiming that Iran is very close to obtaining nuclear weapons. Now, of course, this is he said, she said. This is obviously something that the United States has been combating with Iran for a long time. So it's more than likely true, but of course, you have to play devil's advocate and look at this from Israel and Iran's perspective. And it's a tricky situation because as of right now, the United States is claiming that they're not involved. Supposedly, President Trump was against them doing the attacks. That's obviously up for debate, of course. We know the United States usually has to give the go-ahead for anything significant like this, especially as we do, for the most part, back Israel on most things. Here's a couple videos of the attacks from earlier last night. These, again, were targeted attacks on specific officials as well as nuclear facilities. And as you guys can see with this photo, it's pretty fascinating how accurate some of these these targeted attacks are with these missiles. This was an attack conducted nearly 2,000 kilometers away from Israel, specifically targeting IRGC, the head of the IRGC, right in his apartment. So, of course, we don't want we don't want to be excited for conflict or war, but it's pretty incredible how accurate those missiles can be. Aside from that, here's just a brief overview of Iran at the moment. They are mainly targeting Tehran, which is the capital of the country. You can see the smoke plume there from all the targeted attacks, and of course the airspace around Iran as a whole is pretty much empty at this point. Now, keep in mind, this is still an ongoing event. So Israel Channel 12 is stating that this is the fourth wave they're currently conducting. There might be many more waves we can expect. But the bigger thing here is that this is likely going to be an all-out war between Iran and Israel. Now, something that's really interesting is not a single IAF pilot reported any anti-aircraft fire from Iran. Now, this is something that is interesting because Iran has constantly claimed they are very capable, especially with their airspace, but supposedly Israel slipped right in with their fighter jets and had no issue with that at all. Now, Israel does expect Iran to retaliate in the next couple of hours, if not already. And this is when Iran, of course, will be declaring all-out war with Israel. This is a real tricky situation, guys. Now, we're going to get into the financial markets here soon, but I just really want to emphasize that this could be a major snowball effect into a lot of bigger issues down the line. Again, the United States claims that they're not involved. I personally find that hard to believe. It's not unlikely that this could be another situation that we're looking at with, like with Ukraine in regards to some sort of proxy situation. Now, that's not to say necessarily we're going to start, throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at this war or anything like that. But the United States knows that Iran is a problem, and they were inevitably going to have to do something about them if they did not come to the negotiating table and work out a deal. This is actually something that we touched on about a month ago here on the DataDash YouTube channel. This is what I thought was the biggest threat to the crypto market at the time that not many people were talking about. So in this video, we talked about the situation between Iran and Israel, and how the United States was drastically ramping up their presence in the Middle East. We saw a major shift of U.S. assets to the Middle East, from stripping assets from Ukraine, air defense systems, HIMARS systems, as well as from the Indo-Pacific around Taiwan, all to bring them over to near Iran. A very viral photo that went around was showing 6 B-2 bombers at one Air Force base over near the Middle East. That is something you never see. Keep in mind, there's only about 18 B-2 bombers on the planet. So to put 6 of them in one place, whether it's a show of force or not, is very concerning, and that has definitely made its rounds on the news. So, could the United States be directly involved? I think it's most likely. The probability of that not being the case, I think, is very low, considering, for stuff like this, especially with our odd ties with Israel. Israel undoubtedly got some sort of form of approval, I feel like, from the United States for such a large attack. And again, the United States was trying to work out a deal with Iran in regards to Iran giving up their nuclear facilities, their enriched uranium, and I believe the United States gave Iran roughly a 60-day window to make a deal before something like this could happen. If it is true and Iran does have enriched uranium where they could have nuclear weapons in the next 2 weeks, It's understandable, in my opinion, why we would want to do something about it, considering obviously the majority of government officials wish harm upon the United States and other countries, especially Israel. So here's a statement from Senator Ted Cruz in regards to Iran's stance of continuing to pursue their nuclear weapons.
And this morning, Iran put out a statement, said they would not dismantle their centrifuges. They were going to build more. They were going to enrich more uranium, and they were charging towards a nuclear weapon. And the effect of that was a giant middle finger to President Trump. And it was also telling Israel, you had better strike now, because if you wait any longer, we will have a nuclear weapon and we will use that to murder millions of your citizens. And I think that's we're seeing the direct consequences of Iran's defiance and their genocidal desire to murder as many.
Some fascinating stuff in the financial market, and I'm going to pass things over to our chartist and TA analyst, Paul Sampson. He's phenomenal at what he does, and he's going to give us a good breakdown of all of this. But crude oil futures are going through the roof right now. At the time of recording, crude oil is up 14%. We posted this here on DataDash on X. And then we also have future markets deep in the red. Obviously, cryptocurrency is doing the same. Aside from that, Paul, take it away.
Hey, folks, a bit of uncertainty coming across the markets as the global conflict, that erupted over the night last night. I want to take a look at a bit of the technicals. Obviously, may have been triggered from the overall news and where the market may be going today for Friday as we head into the weekend, and then a little bit of a broader look as well, just to see what the bigger picture still looks like for Bitcoin. So a little more locally here, one of the things that I track pretty much every week, especially in the Traders Club, is the previous week range data for one, as well as the weekly pivot, which is the average of price from last week. Usually that is an area that is met in the following session. So in this case, when I'm looking at the weekly pivot, meaning the weekly average of last week, it is really likely to be met this week, right? So it is something that I'm always aware of. And that level was sitting right around this region right here at about $104,000. And did it have to come down and meet that? By no means. But, with the news and how everything kind of unfolded, I think that it all kind of aligned in that regard. As well as our previous week's range, right? So this is actually the range data from last week. Once again, just something that's statistically back tested, does tend to get rotated, meaning that we will come through and run that range, whether it's from the upside back down to the down, or if we enter from the low side to the upside. And it's likely to be met that next week as well. So a little late in the week, once again, is it something that is, programmed? By no means. I'm sure that the uncertainty and the news and everything kind of had a little hand in it, keeping Bitcoin kind of condensed from getting that next leg up. But once we got this little breakdown here, that is something that I was targeting. And so far, that is just a very technical setup here that is just unfortunately timed right around some of these unfortunate events. Now, as for today, honestly, I could see us getting a little bit of a bounce, even if it's just a relief rally of some degree, just as we either go through the evening here or when the markets open in the morning. Usually we do tend to see a brief period where in the beginning of the day, especially when we get these events overnight, when the stock market is closed, the futures markets, and then the stock market initially when it opens up, there may be some initial selling. And then, of course, traders are going to step in and the price is going to bounce a little bit at times. So we also, after we see very sharp moves like this, very similar to what we saw last week, by no means, is this something that we may see the entire move eaten back up, but we a lot of times will see a good piece of that drop just kind of given back up in the following day. There is two volume areas to note right above us still, basically back to 107,000 and then 109.5. So in the short term here, basically for today, if we start to see the price recover 104,300-ish, I would imagine that we actually get a little bit more of a little rise today as we go into the rest of Friday. Maybe we coast around there throughout the weekend, and then we'll have to see how things start to play out. If anything worsens, obviously, over the weekend, or if we see anything tomorrow, then the price may see a little bit more of a decline. And that kind of leads us into the higher time frame threat or the setup, I guess, that is still at hand, right? And you see me cover this time and time again over the last few weeks here. And that is indeed the larger setup that's at hand right now, which is this bearish shark, right? This is a harmonic setup that we completed on perfect timing at the end of May. We've been ranging around basically in the completion zone, but still at this moment, even all the way up to 114. Unfortunately, this is a very valid setup and a valid play. And realistically, the targets of this region is back down to the 0.5 Fibonacci, which is about 93,000. And then realistically, all the way down to the B point, which is just basically back to this high back on March 25th, around $88,000. So this region is, something that once again, I've been very much pointing out over the last few weeks here. Still not 100% guarantee or anything that we're going to see that region, but just want to point out that this is a very valid setup. Could it get, pushed over into it if things decline in the areas where we're seeing this conflict? It just may, right? So in the bigger picture, this is still something that is of threat, and it's not really too much of a huge drop, but if we were to see it, of course, once again, if news is wrapped around it and a 10-15% drop in Bitcoin is obviously not going to be a fun time for the altcoins. It's going to be a scary time if we do see it, but this still remains the area that I would see as a buy the dip opportunity. I'd be looking for this region to be, if we do get it, where we get that next spring, that next leg up towards basically $130,000 Bitcoin. So in short here, we want to see the weekly pivot, so the average of last week, reclaimed in the short term here, and that's going to give us a little bit of fuel to the upside here. I'd target back to this 107 area, which is pretty much where we traded at all day today, and kind of reevaluate, see if we push through that region and get us up to that 109. But short term, I do anticipate a bounce, even if the overall end goal here is that we're still going to roll over into that shark zone, but that I just highlighted below at 88,093 in the coming weeks. Now for the SPY, which is the ETF that measures against the S&P 500, we did come into that $603 region that I've been targeting for quite some time. This was a untapped point of control. Essentially, this is a high volume level that was left over from Q1. And we came into that with pretty decent resistance, and then we're being held down by it right now. So if things are to get a little more dicey out there and we start to see investors panic sell a little bit as we head into tomorrow, the weekend, an area of support that I think that buyers would probably step back in is going to be around this, the monthly pivot here. So we have that, just like we had the one for the week. We had the average price from last week, likely to be met this week. We have the average price from last month, likely to be met this month. And that is for the SPY that comes in at about 580, right? So once again, not a guarantee. Doesn't have to get down there. It's about a 3% drop if we do, but that is a very technical thing that we would see time and time again. And then really overall, nothing would truly be broken here, right? We're still putting in our higher highs, higher lows, potentially our higher low here. And then otherwise looking to just flip that 603 for any more upside. But with everything going on, if we were to see any downside, I think that the landing zone is right back around this region. Then, of course, when some uncertainties arise in the market, investors tend to run towards things like gold. And gold is obviously seeing a little bit of an uptick here and still pretty much on track, I believe, for that last little, and I don't mean last as in like an all-time high, but an overall high, I guess. But it would be the next jaunt in that next target area still remains at 36.61. So still have our current high sitting at about $3,500. So I have to get through that first. But after that, I'd be looking up towards that 36.61 if we continue upwards here for gold. I'll hand it back over to Ryan now.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you. So there you have it, guys. Ultimately, we'll just have to stay on top of the situation, see if things escalate from here. I think the biggest takeaway for us investors is that we have to stay aware of these situations, of course, but we need to not just panic or let fear take over in times like these. We need to understand that we've been through situations like this already a few times over the last couple of years. Ukraine and Russia, that was in summer 2022. At the time, the crypto market was already becoming quite euphoric. So I think that was just the conflict that nudged the bull run to a finish. But I don't think that would necessarily be the case here. Bitcoin and altcoins are primed I believe, and other people on the channel believe, for much higher. Of course, if this conflict escalates where the United States gets directly involved, or other countries get involved and start backing Iran, then obviously we're looking at a drastically different situation, which honestly, the price of certain assets is probably a lesser of a concern for us. But that is the main thing we just have to pay attention to. Is this just going to be a quick little squabble? Hopefully. If it's not going to be that, what could it become? I think the biggest takeaway is if Israel's true focus is taking out leadership, but more specifically these nuclear facilities, preventing Iran from getting warheads, they need to be successful at it, because if they're not, and say Iran does accomplish their goals and that is all accurate, then we're looking at a much more muddy situation where I think the United States and other countries will have no choice but to step in, because we don't need an 11th nuclear power. And we most certainly don't want it to be a country that aligns more closely to North Korea than they do with the West. So when it comes to us investors, of course, assets like gold and Bitcoin are likely going to perform drastically better than some other assets that are maybe quite speculative. It is fascinating to see crude oil doing what it's doing right now. It might just be reacting to the news. But that could also be something we need to be wary of with this whole situation. The Strait of Hormuz, I believe, that currently funnels a large majority of the world's oil. And if that gets cut off or isolated, or conflict blows up in that region, we could see oil prices across the globe skyrocket. And as we know, oil still runs the world. So if you have oil prices shoot up, every single product and service around the globe will shoot up as well, because it simply costs much more to deliver products across the Pacific Ocean on a cargo ship when gasoline and oil are much more money. So that's another part of this puzzle piece that we don't want to have affected. It's a very delicate situation. I'm pretty certain the United States understands that. That's why they're most likely having Israel do some of their, quote, dirty work for them. And one last thing, I would love to know your guys' take on this style of content. This is a new style we're experimenting here at DataDash, where it's a little more casual, laid back. We go through the breaking developments all together, and we're able to provide our insights. We're able to incorporate Paul with his technical analysis abilities. And overall, we would like to bring more of this to you. So if you found this video informative, let us know with a comment down below, a like on the video. And of course, if this is your first time finding DataDash, consider subscribing so you can stay up to date on everything cryptocurrency, blockchain, finance, and geopolitical. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and we'll catch you in the next.